Oh, yeah, that's better. Now we're like all together. Oh, good to see you. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy Dorr. I am co-founder and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. And it's really, I think many of you were in the previous women's session, but it's great to have this panel that we're bringing up here shortly. You know, the face of entrepreneurship is truly changing, and women and minorities are absolutely getting a bigger piece of the pie, but it's not easy, right? It's a lot of work for any entrepreneur, but let's be really honest, it is definitely harder for women and minorities. But if we know that, we can rally to the resources, we can work to find solutions, and we can come together to support each other, collaborate, and grow our businesses together. So that's what these sessions are all about, because there are unique things that are faced by different groups in the entrepreneurial world, and we're trying really hard at Startup Week to make sure that we take the time to look at them. Amazon's deeply committed to this as well, and of course, as you know, they've been just this incredible title sponsor for us this year. Give Amazon a big thank you on 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Amazon. Yeah. You guys, this is their 3rd year in, and they have been incredible. Certainly bringing their support financially, which is critical so that you can have a free event. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't emphasize that finding corporate partners like this that actually go deep and engage and help find the speakers to come and be part of the event is key. And Brittany Morris-Saunders has been a big piece of that. And I think am I looking right at you? Oh my God. It's nice to meet you, Brittany. No, we've worked together forever. Okay, at this point, I'd like to introduce you to Skye Hart. Skye Hart is a senior solutions architect with AWS, and in her role, she is focused on, woo from Eric, to my fellow co-founder, Eric and Keating, but Skye is very focused on supporting women founders and entrepreneurs. So it's really an honor to have you here today to moderate and host this, and I can't wait for you all to hear from some of the panelists, because they're pretty awesome. All right, here you go, Skye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the session today. Question for the room. I see a bunch of women and a bunch of allies. How many of you are founders? Raise your hand. Nice. Yes, look at that. How many of you started your company less than a year ago? Okay. How many of you had companies over a year? Over 2 years? Over 5 years? Over 10 years. Nice, nice. It's like the wedding game, but welcome. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Skye Hart. I'm a senior solutions architect. I kind of have the coolest job in the world because I get to help and support founders every single day build. And a lot of you might be wondering, what does AWS have to do with startups? And I also asked that before I got the job. And I think that there is a huge ecosystem. So for a couple minutes, I'm just going to explain to you all the programs, all of the offerings that we have today, and kind of envision the art of the possible before we enter into our amazing panel. So a lot of people know AWS as a tech company. Yeah, we have cloud infrastructure. We have AI services and databases and compute. But we also have things that people don't know about, such as our go-to-market strategists. We have teams of business development folks, venture capital groups, relationships, all that good stuff that are readily available to you in your startup. We also have a really compelling ecosystem, and we like to spotlight founders of all different stages, all different industries, all different verticals. So you might ask yourself, what stage am I in? That's why I asked the question in the beginning, because you're never too early to get involved with us. And the benefit is that hopefully you have a positive experience, you keep growing, you become the next Airbnb, you become the next Pinterest, you become the next unicorn. So whatever element and whatever path you are on, we have programs available. We have accelerators, we have incubators that take zero equity, $0. We have CXO, foundation talks, we have training, we have all of these different programs available to you. The impact. I'll describe the impact in 3 ways and stuff I see every single day talking to my startups. One is technical. You get a nerd like me who can help you build your MVP and your prototype and test and make sure that when you scale your app to 10 million users, it doesn't crash. You can also have, the second one is the monetary incentives, and I'm not gonna stand here and say, here is all the money, but find me after, and I can talk to you through credit programs we have. Even if you aren't backed, if you're pre-seed, if you're bootstrapping, I understand the struggle, come talk to me. And the third that I'll say is our ecosystem. You can position your startup, and we can actually do joint go-to-market partnerships on our marketplace. So if you're selling, if you have SaaS applications, if you have services, and you want to sell using our ecosystem, that's available to you as well. So we have a lot of great impact. I'm going to say visit the AWS Startups website, scan here. You can see all of the information from our incubators, our accelerators, credit programs, how to register your startup, how to get a nerd like me to work with you alongside your team. All for free, too. That's what I'm saying. And without further ado, I want to introduce this. I'm part of Women at Startups at AWS. It's an amazing program. I'm really passionate about women entrepreneurship. If you saw the keynote yesterday, the mayor said it best. Denver is the #1 place for women entrepreneurs. How incredible is that? It's amazing. So I had the pleasure of pulling together this founder panel today with some of the best and the brightest folks I had the pleasure of spending. I'm so excited for them to chat. We did a dry run, and I was like, this is going to be amazing. They're so natural, and they've been in the industry for a while, so we're going to learn a lot. And last thing I'll note, scan for live Q&A. We're going to have this up during the entire session. Ask questions live. In the last 10 minutes, we'll pull up your questions and be able to answer those as well. So thank you very much. I'll introduce the panel now. Oh, it's smooth. Yeah, go, and there's mics in your seat. Yeah.
All right, let's do a mic check on me. Good? All right, good. Awesome. Well, I'll start with introductions. I know a few people in this audience. I'm Frannie Matthews. I lead the Colorado Technology Association. And I was thrilled when Amazon and AWS asked me if I was interested. I'm like, I'm always interested in hearing from women in business and certainly for entrepreneurs. So why don't we go just domino down, if you can introduce yourselves, your company, and any shameless plug that you want to do. It's short.
Yeah, well, if a shameless plug is in the I'm just kidding. I'm Lee Mayer. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Havenly. We do a number of things, almost all in the home furnishing space. So we started with an interior design company, served almost 1 million, I think, rooms across the U.S. And then we also own a couple of furnishings brands called Interior Define. We have retail stores. You'll see us in Cherry Creek, for example, and then The Inside. No.
Think of one. I'm Kathy Keating. I am a co-founder of a company called CTO Levels. I'm a CTO by trade, a serial entrepreneur, had exit. And what we do with CTOs is help you understand the role of the CTO, help you grow in the role, help you thrive and flourish by giving you a framework that teaches you how to do the role, and we partner that with group coaching and advising. So,
hi everybody, I'm Kristin Langenfeld, CEO and co-founder of Goodbye Gear, and we're an online marketplace for secondhand and open box baby and kid gear. So we make it easy for parents to get the stuff they need for their kids at a price they can pay and get it back into circulation when they're done. So it's a managed marketplace. We take everything into a warehouse and we inspect it and put it online. So you can check it out, goodbyegear.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Arezou Zarafshan, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Emmy. Show of hands, how many of you are parents here? Okay, quite a few. So our mission is to help the busy moms, busy parents, but really busy moms, stop doing it all. So we provide on-demand help, on-demand trusted help to busy families. And I do have a shameless plug. we are a finalist at the Denver Startup Week pitch competition. So I invite all of you to come to the final pitch session, which is Thursday at 4 p.m., and cheer us on. Thank you.
So you all were inspired at one point or another to start this, not work for someone else, but become entrepreneurs. Lee, am I right in saying that Havenly's been around for 9 years to start with?
I think it's 8.
8?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with 8.
Yeah.
It's a long time. So what inspired you to like, wow, I think I'm going to go do this?
It's a good question. I get asked it a lot, and I don't have a particularly great answer. And the reason for that is I hadn't intended to start a company. So it wasn't like I just saw the name of the book, like build that damn thing, like quit my job, do my thing. That's really not what happened with me anyway. What happened with me was a little bit more nuanced. So, and that's also why I'm always a little confused about when we started it, because I'm not entirely sure. I know I quit my job in 2015, so maybe that's probably helpful. So what ended up happening was I thought it was a good idea, but I thought it was a good idea as a consumer, not as a person that was going to start the business. I was working for a private equity firm, ended up at one of their portfolio companies. They were acquiring a bunch of businesses, and then they went public. And so after that company went public, everyone starts to like look around and think about their next gig, right? Because, working for a public company is very different. I started to look for jobs. So the types of jobs I used to take were, highly compensated finance or consulting gigs. But I was here in Denver, Colorado. I'd moved out here. And there just wasn't a lot out there in Denver at the time. The finance and strategy consult, McKinsey and Bain now have offices here. They didn't back then. So there just wasn't a lot for me. Anyway, I was looking for things to do, and sort of started tinkering on this idea. By the way, I think there were a couple of others. I remember my sister and I were thinking about. And this one kind of just kept coming back. We kept kind of working on it. We started to get some customers. We got a little bit of press. And then we got into I think it was 500 startups. And that was oh, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden I woke up one day and realized that I was only doing this. I'd quit my job. I wasn't doing the consulting thing. I wasn't looking for other jobs, real jobs, as my mom would say, still. So it's interesting. I don't know if I had the risk tolerance to one day just up and leave. So I'm grateful it happened that way, but it's not as sexy of a story, I suppose. It's a true story, though.
I do think we should put a pin into the discussion of risk tolerance, because I think it's a really big deal. Kristin, I am assuming that you're hey, this is a waste, and we could solve this in the market. You saw a market gap.
Yeah, for sure. And I think similar to Lee, there was a whole journey before starting the company. But I remember I had my daughter, and we were, I was the only female on the team, and we had mates, so it was my fault, but we had a maternity policy that was 2 weeks. So I remember going back and being on a conference call, and all the guys, everyone's sitting around, everyone's shooting the shit, and I was I'm away from my baby, and I just got off the phone, and 2 weeks in, you're no sleep, and you're not thinking. I just bawled my eyes out. I'm I can't do this, And I think through that journey, I was the company's awesome. They're here. They're a mobile identity authentication company. But I was am I going to dedicate the time I'm going to be away from my daughter to be making our login safer? Does that feel like what I want to do with my precious time I'm going to be away from my baby? Because I definitely want to work, and that was personal decision. And so. The idea for Goodbye Gear, it was actually my sister-in-law who when I was working in tech and living in New York, and she was can you do something about this? We have so much shit for our kid, and they use it for 5 minutes, and we need to get rid of it. We need a whole nother set of gear. And I was I don't get it. I have 3 things to my name in my apartment in New York, and then when my husband and I were here and had a child, and we're pretty minimalist, and all of a sudden we have all this stuff, and people are just giving us more stuff, and we're but we already have 2 jumperoos or whatever it might be. And so there's got to be a better way. Like, there's a lot of people that need this, and we should be able to get this back into circulation. And this is what my sister-in-law was talking about, and that was sort of the light bulb that maybe something could be done about this. And then everyone said, oh, join these Facebook groups, or at the time it was like a listserv for Highlands Mommies up here, if anyone's in Highlands Mommies. And if you are, you probably remember I posted on there and said, does anyone have the same problem as me? Because well, I happened to have a bad experience trying to buy something and showed up at this lady's house and stunk like weed, and she had big dogs and wanted cash for this stroller with the tires were flat. I was like, oh my God, this is a horrible experience. Why are we doing this to ourselves? And sent a survey out to the whole moms group, and I had 70 families sign up to be part of a beta if I was going to do something about it. And so that was sort of the start of what is now Goodbye Gear. At the time it was called Kid Gear, and it was Denver Startup Week 7 years ago, and my co-founder and I we made business cards that said Kid Gear with like clothes on the line, which we don't do clothes, but it was like this cute little thing that was where we started the company. It was 7 years ago today.
So Arezou, you kind of have refined that idea of texting in the neighborhood.
Yes, yes, I have. So do you want me to talk about
chat a little bit about how you started that and how.
Yeah, so for me, it was kind of a juxtaposition of a lot of different things that just confluenced at the same time. First of all, as you grow in your career, for me, I got to a point where I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I constantly got in trouble. And so that kind of limited how far I could go, even though I still at that time had big jobs, big responsibilities, but it just was a really, really frustrating experience for me, just because of my personality. And additionally, when I became a mom, I realized that I can't do this without help. I can't, keep a big job and have a child and have quality family time, so I need help. So I went through a lot, care.com, Sitter City, Urban Sitter, mommies groups, you name it, to find help. I hired and fired 12 people that I can remember, spent thousands of dollars on background checks that were quite ineffective, hundreds on subscription fees. And after all of that, I found a very special person, and her name was Emmy. And Emmy became my lifeline, and everything worked with that trusted help until she decided to move on. And at that time, I had to make a decision of, do I want to go through that excruciating process and experience to find yet another Emmy and keep going back to corporate and have those frustrations, or do I want to solve the problem? And I decided I wanted to solve the problem for every working mom.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So Kathy, you have, we could talk about what you're doing now, but take a look at her LinkedIn. It's like, you didn't get to doing what you're doing by this being your first experience. Talk about some of the challenges that you have experienced as you did startup, but what do you see the challenges in really early, like as people are starting their entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons we founded CTO Levels. So I have had a long history of building incredible things, and so early on in my career, I had the luxury of building 3 firsts. 3 products that were first in its category, and all 3 of them went to own their category. And that idea of building a first and being really passionate about problems that are worth solving, I think really jazzes me. Like, I love to tackle problems that are worth solving. But when I moved here to Colorado in 2005, I had worked at big companies before in Boston, and then I moved here. There was no innovation going on at big companies. And so I started to go the startup route. And what I realized in startups is that they're really messy. Most of the people working in startups, it's their first time that they've held their role. As a technologist, I was seeing senior engineers getting CTO titles and having no idea what that CTO job is. And so continuing to act like a senior engineer because that's what they knew, right? And so I was seeing a lot of startups really struggling, not because their idea was bad, but because they just didn't know how to do the job. And they weren't surrounding themselves with people who are experienced to do the job. And so I've become very passionate about that. I'm a mentor in the Techstars ecosystem. I'm constantly taking calls with anyone who wants to talk about how can I do this job better. And that's how CTO Levels was formed. We decided that most of the CTOs we talked to had no idea what their job was. It didn't matter if you were a startup CTO or you had a team of 100 plus, you still didn't know what the CTO job was. And the job radically changes. And so we felt it was really important, if we're going to have these great ideas manifest in the world, that CTOs actually knew how to build it and how to do the job and how to grow really quickly as the company is growing and transition your job to what you need to do next as the company grows. And so CTO's Levels is a framework that teaches you exactly how to do the job. We provide you exactly what to do for the size of your company. We provide playbooks. You can also, all of that I just described is open source. You can get to the framework by going to ctolevels.com. But we also partner it with group coaching, one-on-one coaching, forums, just depending on where you are and what you need.
Yeah. I think as you look at the journeys, there's often these pivotal moments, these ahas that happen. Anybody want to share about something you didn't expect to happen? You have this pivotal moment, you have this aha that probably happens at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're thinking about your business, and how it changed the way you viewed your approach.
I can start. I think one of the things that's sort of interesting that happened to us was you kind of, sometimes you can get in your own way just by sitting in the day-to-day. And I found it really interesting because what I was doing was putting blinders on to other opportunities. So I'll be pretty specific. So what I realized was I can go out and buy companies. I come from the private equity world, like that's what you used to do. And what I realized is like there are actually these interesting opportunities, even when you're small, to accelerate growth dramatically and not spend a lot of money to do it. And it's as simple as going out and acquiring other businesses that have achieved some level of scale. And it was sort of, and it's one of those things that like, the realization wasn't that I could go and buy companies. The realization was you can sometimes get locked in your framework. My mission was to do this. I wanted to solve interior design. I wanted to make sure that I could resell gear, whatever I wanted to make, but like, and those are still really valid things, but there are probably things that are just outside of it that are also really interesting if you either bring them into the fold or think more deeply about whether or not it fits into your strategy. I have a friend who y'all probably know the company ClassPass. She talks about this where it started as just like listing of gyms and classes in your area, and then the unlock was like, oh wait, if I actually like look a little to the side of what I'm doing, I can come up with an idea, or there's this idea that actually has real demand behind it. And I think that that's actually been like helpful for me. It's helpful for me to sometimes think about, you define yourself in your company because you pitch it, you talk about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, that other thing makes a lot of sense to do here.
No, I agree. And we had a similar where, went to build the company as a technology company with an app and like making it easy for people to connect. And what we discovered by just listening to customers and like, we were defined by a tech company, and then it was like, but families don't have time to list these items. Even if we do all the work, tell them what it is, what to price it at, we'll come pick it up, we'll do all the work. But we had, moms and some dads, but they would say, oh, thank you for taking this. I have another, 50 things in my basement. And we were like, well, we can just take them for you. Really? Okay. And like gave them we didn't have this on our website. We weren't planning to do a managed marketplace and take physical inventory, but it was what customers need and what we needed to do to solve the real pain point, and ultimately, be able to change consumerism and make this possible for families, was doing the hard change of a business model, which is the managed marketplace. The other big unlock for us was supply has always been the biggest challenge, a two-sided marketplace. And we discovered, and I don't remember exactly how we found this out, but just through talking to folks in the industry, that baby gear, anything that a baby or a child sits in, sleeps in, eats in, if it's returned, it's destroyed. So if you return it to a retailer or you return it to a brand, it's destroyed. And the reason being is, if you return it to a Target, the store associate doesn't know if that's the recalled model or not, or if that's defective or not. And so, don't have the infrastructure to be able to do those quality checks. And so when we learned that, it was a huge unlock to say, that's what we do. We've built the database, we've built the technology, we've built our tech operations to be able to ensure that that item is safe and not recalled and not defective and is perfectly good to go back into circulation. And so we started to reach out to some retailers, and we ended up getting one big retailer to start with, and then slowly over the years now have 28 partners of partners that send us their open box inventory that we quality check. So that was a huge unlock for us. It's hard to build a marketplace, as you know, two sides of the marketplace. So being able to get one side of it going when we have the demand nationwide was a big unlock for us.
I'm thinking back to when I was at Apostrophe, which was my second company, health tech, and our goal was to save 20% off of healthcare costs for employers, which is a very audacious goal. But early on, we got really locked into this picture that we were going to do this by having a payment card that you'd have, that was your insurance made the payment, but you'd go and you'd slide your Visa at your Visa payment card at the doctor's office, and the insurance would cover the cost and everything like that. So we got really locked into this picture of what this vision was going to play out for. And there was a really pivotal moment in my mind. I remember where we were at the whiteboard drawing pictures, how are we going to make this payment card work? MasterCard and Visa were going to charge us hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it, which we didn't have. And all of a sudden, we were at the whiteboard and we're like, we don't need a payment card. We can work with the bank to use virtual card technology and just pay the claim as a claim gets processed. And that epiphany of being up there and drawing and really realizing the difference between the picture of what we were trying to do versus the vision of what we were trying to achieve, and remembering to stay on the vision side and be open to like the 4 or 5 different ways in which we could do it. And that was a really pivotal moment for us. We actually went on, we're really successful using virtual card technology, so.
Well, what you each explained was, kind of learning through the journey. But you also can shortcut sometimes from getting advice. So could we kind of pivot to mentorship? And I love this conversation because it's usually a two-way street. I think we've got this thing in our heads that it's a hierarchy, and it's not. You learn from one another. Can you just share with us, some important mentorships that have helped?
Yeah, I can talk about that. And in fact, that was my kind of the aha epiphany as well. So as somebody that came from, corporate, lots of experience, when I stepped into entrepreneurship, I thought I knew what I was doing. I wasn't really prepared for feeling as vulnerable and as lost as I felt. And in pursuit of certainty and direction, I defined a strategy, I defined a direction, and I happened to talk to a good friend of mine who was also a founder, and I will name her here because I have so much respect for her. Her name is Liz Ortel. Some of you probably know her. She was the founder of Nano. And Liz is extremely, extremely direct. She kicks your rear just in one sentence, and she is the type of mentor that would tell you what you do not want to hear. And what I learned is that for me, that's the kind of mentorship I need. I need someone to absolutely tell me what I don't want to hear, at least for the first year or two. Now when I talk to Liz and she agrees with what I say, I know I have it right. So that's been exceptionally helpful for me.
Well, Kathy, you're mentoring all the time.
Yeah, on the mentoring side. I actually feel like I didn't ever have a mentor, which I think is really common, especially for a lot of women technologists. I hear that a lot, although that's changing, right? And so my mission in life is to change that for the next generation, so I will be your mentor. But as I started founding companies, I really realized I needed to surround myself with people who had done it, right? Who had done the role, if I wanted to build rapid growing companies. And so I have spent my time seeking out those places where those people live and where they commune together as peers. And it's actually really hard, right? I'm looking for CTOs, like I just met the CTO of Zoom a couple weeks ago. I'm looking for those moments in which I can find someone who's doing something at scale that I want to be at, and how can I build a relationship with them? And those moments, even if it's a 10-minute conversation, are brilliant to be able to pick their mind. How do they think about things? What is the idea that's on the top of my mind? And that's how I use mentorship today, is just in those moments, when can I find a person who is 2 to 3 steps ahead of me, and how can I leverage those 10 minutes to pull me forward? And so, yeah, so now I'm in a lot of private CTO communities surrounded by a lot of these people, which is great, but seeking those places where those people are going to challenge you and make you think about things very differently.
Yeah, help you find your own blind spots. Yeah, yeah. We talked a little bit, just briefly, on risk, and I'd like to bring that back as it relates to innovation, because I think we have the bias to what's going on right now as being the least risky, and that's actually not very true. So when you look at innovation and being, forward-thinking, you're predicting the future every time you innovate. And this interesting quote from Kate Moss, of all people, which is, I shouldn't have said all people. I don't know Kate Moss very well, but I know her body of work. You have to stay ahead of the game to be able to stay in the game. And so, I think most of you are beyond like survival mode. However, I think everybody's frightened about failure. How do you look at innovation, changing what's working, keeping things fresh, and trying new things in the backdrop of risk mitigation?
I think one of the things that I think is true about companies that do this well is they have a culture of intellectual honesty that extends to the top. And then they also have incredibly high standards for the people that work for them.
Tell us what you mean by intellectual honesty.
So intellectual honesty is that feeling when you just fucked it up. Sorry, am I allowed to say fuck? I'm probably not. And you say, I just fucked it up.
Right.
It's the ability to basically say, yeah, this wasn't the smartest idea. Or, hey, what we've been working on, the payment card that we thought, the fact that we didn't need a managed marketplace, you know what? We were wrong and we have to do it differently. And that, I think, is, and again, high standards for people is tough. Like, people hate that. They sort of feel like that's not, I don't know, that's not kind somehow, but I would argue that it's like the kindest thing you could do, is to say to someone, you're not actually the right fit here because of the way we operate around, in particular, intellectual honesty. And high quality decision making. And that helps a lot. It also helps to have this, I'm venture backed, so I've raised, $104 million in venture capital dollars, something like that. And the reason people gave me capital is not to deliver 5% returns. the reason they gave me capital is to deliver material returns over the course of however long this takes. And I think understanding that and realizing that I have to be risk on, even if personally I don't feel super comfortable with it, that like it's actually my job as a steward of this capital to be a little risk on, is also helpful. And so, you know, some of the things that we talked about in the mentorship conversation, I'd want to extend to part of your job as CEO is to constantly scan the market. Oftentimes we think our job as CEO is to do like internal strategy and team building and you know, fundraising and whatever else. I would argue that like what keeps me really sharp as a CEO is like I'm consistently talking to other CEOs. It is, what are you doing? What are you doing in your space in healthcare? What are you doing in AI? What are you doing in AI? What are you doing in crypto? Although that was annoying. That period was annoying. I didn't like it. But like, I'm glad we're out of it. But like, what is it? What are you doing? What are you working on? What's interesting? What are other people doing in analogous businesses that I need to be thinking about? And that can be not just what we do, so how we service the customer or tools and things. It can be processes. What processes are we putting in? What leadership team cadences do you have? How do you hire? What's your AWS bill? You know, that was the conversation at dinner last night. But I think like, you know, those are the kinds of things. But again, if you're not willing to again like sort of say you're wrong and be honest about the fact that like, you know, you're learning new things, and sometimes the things you did weren't the right things, et cetera, it doesn't matter. Right. You'll hear the best ideas in the world, and you'll dismiss them because they're not your ideas. They weren't how you were doing things.
I think that's very interesting, thinking about the risk tolerance for your investors relative to your own risk tolerance. Yeah.
I think a lot about the process for making decisions. I see a lot in early to mid-stage startups, this gut decision making, and it's not really based on any process for, is this, what are the pros and cons? You know, is this high, what are the possibilities that can happen to me? It's really just like, oh yeah, I think this is right, so I'm gonna go this direction. And what happens when we do that is we're placing a lot of onus on luck to get us to make the right thing happen for us, the successful thing happen. And so we're putting on the shoulders of luck that, hey, luck is gonna get me this thing because my gut said so. And I think we need to change our relationship with how we think about assessing risk. There's a great book out there called Thinking in Bets. It's by Annie Duke. She's a professional poker player, and she describes the decision-making process as two things. There's either the facts that you know about the situation and luck, and every decision has both. So the question is, how much is luck going to play in that decision versus how much are facts going to play in the decision? And our job as leaders is to have as many of the facts as we can, use that to assess the risk, and just realize luck is going to be a factor in everything. COVID showed us that, right? Mm-hmm. Many companies had great potential, and then COVID took everything out from underneath them, and that was something that we couldn't predict, right? So I just think it's important for us to think about what is your process for assessing risk, and how much onus are you going to put on luck versus actual fact-finding mission.
One interesting thing about Annie Duke, who I've read quite a bit of also around decision making, is you also should stop looking for facts at a point. At some point, not making a decision is also a decision.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is, and like you should just go. And then, you know, when you look back at a stupid decision you make, you know, like you just have to also understand that you did what you did, knowing what you knew at the time. And those are like pretty empowering things, again, as you think about risk in general.
I saw that in the telecommunications industry when it started to disrupt. We had one telecom company that was like, they did it wrong 5 times, and they stole the market. And the other one, perfection. Yeah.
Analysis paralysis is just like making a decision.
Yeah. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is funding gap. So I had just had the opportunity to interview Julia Borston last week, who's a CNBC reporter, wrote a book called When Women Lead, awesome book. And she had some frightening details. Between 2011 and 2020, 3% of all venture cap globally went to women. And then in 2021, 82% of all venture capital went to all male teams, not just a male founder, but all male teams. And less than 2% went to female founders. So, Arezou, I know this is, you want to, I'm just going to like launch. Just
Warning, warning. You know, as a founder, I will come out and say that there is no, in my experience, there is no deliberate designed bias. So I've never gone to a meeting with any investor who has said, oh, you're a woman, I'm not going to give you money. That bias just, I haven't experienced it. Maybe I've been lucky. However, I haven't gotten the money. Now, let's peel the onion. And it's very interesting for, again, speaking from my perspective, my experience, but I will draw some generalization from it. When you look at our business, which has mainly been bootstrapped, but we do have a tremendous support from angels and AWS, by the way. Shameless plug. The unit economics are solid. When you look at, there is this metric called LTV to CAC, which is lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. When you look at our business, our LTV to CAC is 31. Name one consumer business that brings 31 times your money. When you look at the founders, solid. When you look at our strategy and our execution, solid. So there is no argument with our business metrics. That said, the most common pushback that I get from investors is this: I'm not feeling it.
so back to the not data stuff.
Right. I can't do a damn thing about the investor not feeling it. What can I do? Nothing. I can't do a damn thing. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to stay back. I'm not saying no. I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to stay back and wait for somebody to step in. Then I might come in. So I've come to the realization that it's not the business. I should have come to it like the first time I pitched, but after 2 years of pitching, I've come to the realization that it's not the business. It's me. Now, what about me? Okay, first of all, I'm a woman. I'm a person of color. I have a way of delivering my messages. And so that is what I'm struggling with. And when you look at data, the data actually supports it. When you look at pitches that are delivered by male founders versus female founders, the male founder pitches, the questions that they get, all focused on the future and the possibility. And one common question that these founders are asked is this: are you thinking big enough? For female founders, on the other hand, the questions are all about risk mitigation. How are you going to manage competition? How are you going to manage disintermediation, which is a term in marketplaces, et cetera? It's all about risk mitigation. It's not about how big can you go, how fast can you go, what can you do with more money? And so back to the whole point that there is no explicit, I have not experienced an explicit bias, there is an implicit bias. And so what is the solution for that? I don't know. Keep trying. Ask these guys that have been funded.
Well, yeah, Lee, I've got to ask you, 100 million, how, you know, you're breaking the odds.
I don't know that I am. But I think as a woman, I feel two ways about those stats. I mean, I really only feel one way. It's like It's fucking awful. But the thing I don't like about this question sometimes is what I worry about is that it creates a sentiment that it's impossible to do this as a woman. And I don't know, like, I guess the best way of putting it is there's a disadvantage when you start businesses. You're gonna have one. Even if you're a Caucasian white man named Chad. Sorry, there's nothing wrong with the name Chad, but you get my point. There's probably some disadvantage that you have and some advantage you have. And I 100% agree that like one of the disadvantages that you might have is you don't have a penis, right? Like that's probably a disadvantage that you might have. But another disadvantage
Only on camping trips.
Only on camping. That's right. Yeah. But like there's also disadvantages that you might have that are like, I don't know, you're in an industry that people don't like people don't aren't so big on marketplaces anymore, for example. People aren't so big on consumer companies anymore. So that's a disadvantage. And even if I were a white man or you know any other sort of group that's historically been privileged, I have those disadvantages. And so the thing that I will say about, and this is by the way not to diminish the experience of so many women, including myself, that have gone through this and felt like, hey, this is a little bit harder for me. It's more like it's just one of many things that you have to consider when you do this. So like, please, if anyone hears this, like, don't ever think that it's not possible. It is possible. It's just harder. Now, there are things that can make it easier. And I think we all know what those are. I will say I have experienced explicit bias in my funding processes from getting hit on. So I was divorced, and I'd still wear a wedding band when I was pitching. So from getting hit on and, you know, heavy insinuations around those things and, you know, getting money, you know, that kind of thing. I've also experienced bias where someone's like said I don't look like a startup CEO. That actually just happened when I walked in today, right? Like, it happens all the time. When someone's like, oh, you're a speaker, you run the company. You know, it's like the amount of times that's happened, and it happens all the time in ways big and small. And so, you know, I think that the answer from my perspective is, it is what it is. And it fucking sucks. And like the only way you're gonna fix it, by the way, is like being really successful and doing it anyway and trying to raise as much funding as possible. And then, hey, when you're rich, you can then fund women too, right? Which is, the only angel investing I do, by the way, is for women and people of color. I don't write checks for anyone besides that. And it's because of that point. It's because sometimes you just have to like work within the system and try and make it different in your own way. Sorry, Kristin, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask in the stats, like, what is the percentage of women that are going out trying to get funding? Because that's where, I mean, I think that there's, you know.
Well, it's almost
Where's it
equal,
start
isn't
from?
it? 46% women?
That goes try to raise money?
Yeah, that have tries to raise money. So it falls off, but I kind of like the question because the numbers are so bad. You can double the amount of funding that goes to women so much quicker.
I don't feel like I said all I wanted to say. Which
All right.
is, I totally want to build on what Lee said. It's not impossible. First of all, who says we have to get venture capital? There's all kinds of, I mean, the previous panel was all about different sources of the money. You know, I've bootstrapped the company, and like I said, I have a lot of angels that have been just so much more meaningful to me as angel investors when somebody puts in their own money than someone else's money. But all of that aside, if venture capital is the right kind of money for you, nobody says that it's impossible. You know, in fact, it's a challenge. Right on. Bring it on. Because we can do this. We just have to work harder, which is not new to us.
Or smarter. I mean, I think it's really interesting that you said, well, maybe it's me. Maybe you need a front guy.
That's like, by the way, something I think a lot of women have thought about. Like, maybe I should just hire a white male actor. I had a VP of marketing named Matt. Yeah. You might know Matt Early. Great guy, by the way. Awesome. But every once in a while, he wants to be like the mayor of Denver, or like the governor of Colorado or something. I have no idea. But he would walk in, we'd like walk in together, and he'd just like act like the CEO. Like people would like go up to him and be like, "Oh, you're the CEO of Havenly," and he'd be like, "Yeah." Like there was a ski trip on. Anyway, long story short, I saw how people reacted to him. He's like a tall, relatively good-looking white guy. He'll be really upset. I said relatively. I should probably. By the way, but I saw how people reacted to him, and I was like, "Huh, maybe I should just like let him be CEO." Like for those meetings. I don't know. Has anyone done that?
Yeah, people have.
I haven't done that, but I will say in the we raised a round that we announced earlier this year, and
Congrats, by the way.
yes, thank you. It was not easy, but the investors came out to our warehouse in Philly, and my director of ops is like this big burly guy, and they ask him questions. I was like, I just don't have that in me. You ask a question, he has no fucking idea what the answer is, and he's just like 24, and you're like. What? That is not right, but they think it's right, and we're just going to continue and go with it. Like, just the confidence of, like, saying stuff when you don't actually know, and I'm the worst at that. So, like, I was able to raise money, and I am Canadian. I am the worst liar. I, like, don't know how to embellish anything, and I don't know how to, like, say something if I don't actually know the answer. So if I can do it, then anyone can do it. So you just keep building a business that solves a real problem and that the dollars and cents make. That they add up. And I think that's all you can do, and you'll find the right partners. But you do have to kiss a lot of frogs, a lot, and not let it bother you.
One thing I was thinking is to remind ourselves that this is not our problem to solve as women. This is their problem to solve about how they choose to invest and who they choose to invest and how they feel it or don't feel it, right? And so we do need to work smarter. And for me, smarter is bootstrapping, getting to revenue faster, seeking those paths in which I can maintain my ownership of my own company, and so the funds come to me instead of them if I ever was acquired. So being smarter about that, but also being smarter about who I surround myself with, and ensuring that the people I'm giving my time to the people who I know are allies, and not giving time or attention to anyone that isn't. So I'm pretty brutal about that. And of course, as a woman CTO, I'm surrounded by that because I've always been the first woman, right? Mm-hmm. So seeking how to navigate to find those allies, and then hold those allies accountable to hold those other men accountable in the equation, I think is really important. Right. And so the more allies, men who are allies can speak up when they see this and challenge it when they see that, that's how we change this, right? It's men changing it with men. It's not, the women here, we're just operating in a system in which we don't have control over being able to change it, otherwise than being who we are.
So we're about to go to question and answer, but before we do, we are here with AWS. Can you guys give some examples of how you've worked with AWS and how helpful that's been?
I was just telling the story back there, but we use Shopify, but we have our backend systems are all on AWS, and we had we were going to build out a whole data warehouse and reporting system, and we had a guy from Amazon come in and consult, and he was like, "I'll just show you in QuickSight," which is like a reporting tool on AWS, and so now we use QuickSight for everything. It's like our internal reporting, but also all our partners, like Pottery Barn Kids and Nordstrom and Target, like they log into AWS's QuickSight, which is not beautiful, but it works, and it's really efficient. It's real time. So we put everything, and it's sort of, we can get all our data in one spot and actually have a tool on top of it that we use externally.
If Amazon's proven anything to me anyway, it doesn't have to be beautiful, but if it's like really, the amount of times I'm on the Amazon website and I'm like, then I spend like, my Amazon personal spend must be like, I don't even know. It's definitely my, so if you're starting a business, I think Amazon still does this. I know we took advantage of it pretty heavily. The free credits through accelerators or venture funds. It's freaking unbelievable. Like, and the funny part is, it's actually a really good business idea for Amazon because you end up like scaling up your spend, but you don't know it because it's free. And then one day your CTO or whoever will come to you and be like, you're gonna get billed $200,000 this month, and you're gonna say, what? And that'll happen, but like up until then, you're spending nothing, which is an incredible way to get off the ground and scale. And by the way, that team has been supportive. It sounds like for you as well, like around some interesting solutions just to, as we've increased our technology presence. So
I would say delay though before you start using those credits, because if you use them when you're like doing $20 or whatever, like, just wait until you're a little bit scaled, so because it's a big chunk of money, but you definitely want to make that last. You didn't spend it all before it expired.
Good pro tip.
Yeah. I would just throw in there's credits were invaluable to us as Apostrophe. We went 2 years on our credits before we used them up, so it was amazing. I don't think we could have done it without it. But the other thing is, myself and also Emmy, when I advise, we go get a well-architected review, which is something that Amazon provides. They partner you with the right third parties to do it, and they come through your whole Amazon system and give you advice on what you should change. It could be billing, so you might want one for your billing. It could be architecture, how your systems are set up, and that's brilliant if you're just at that time when you're about to go live or have gone live, and you want to ensure that you're going to be set up for scale. And I just love that.
Cool. Okay, so I'm on the app right now, and one of the questions that we have is, what is your advice to how to pivot into a startup world when you've been a generalist in the corporate environment? And Arezou, I mean, you were in consumer products with OtterBox and Crocs in the past.
HP and pop sockets.
Yeah. You want to take this one?
Yeah, for me, I didn't have the aha moment like, oh, I want to create a double-sided marketplace that helps, women or moms in an on-demand fashion. The idea just piece by piece came to me. And my big, realization was the idea wouldn't leave me alone. But I was like, okay, I need to go and I need to make money and I need to focus my job. The idea would not leave me alone. And when I sat with it over a course of 6 months, piece by piece it came together and it got completed. So my advice to someone that's a generalist at the corporate is, don't try to get to an answer too fast. Just let it marinate in your heart, in your mind, and eventually the vision will manifest itself to you.
Or join, I don't know if the question was to start a startup but either way, joining a startup is a great way to learn too.
I think there's a little bit of, for me, it's don't spend too much time. I love Denver Startup Week, but one of the things that I think is sort of interesting that I see people do is they think they need to be prepared or go to all these events and meet these. Just start it, just do it. Take the step, take the leap. It's amazing how much momentum you'll pick up when you actually throw yourself into something. Or take the job or whatever it is.
The skill I think that attracts corporate people to startup founders to hire is the skill of being able to thrive in chaos, because startups are chaotic. So build that skill within yourself and learn how to fail and learn from failure. I think a lot of people do not thrive in startups if they're so scared of failure that they never do anything, right? And so we fail all the time.
And I will follow up with, if you're a generalist in a corporate environment, I can guarantee you have more skills than you realize you do. So with that, we are about to get the hook. Actually, we should have gotten it a minute ago. In the app, if you're in the app, you've got Q&A on one side and you've got polling on the other. And the polling is frowny face, no face, happy face. If you could just give us some feedback, we'd love it. Thank you very much. Thank you.